All right, let's get into the most dangerous part, firing an employee, our last little segment. Again, if you've got questions, please drop them into the Q&A. Um, I don't know. I go back to my early days when I was managing a business. I was probably in my 30s, maybe early 30s. A pretty large accounting, financial planning, and contracting business here in Melbourne. 55 employees, probably 55 million turnover. I still remember my chairman. He's no with us. He's no longer with us. He's up there, but he was sitting there with his pipe, smoking a pipe. You probably can't do that anymore.
No.
Drinking a glass of Chardonnay. You probably can't do that anymore either. And he said to me, "Now, Jansz, the one thing I'm going to share with you is you need to learn to fire well and hire well." And it was an interesting thing, very intimidating at the time, but it's like, right, so hire well and fire well. What are the things that, again, this is where most of the exposure will come out. Termination meetings are not easy. So
No.
is that fair to say, is that where most of the legal exposure is created?
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people exposure occurs because emotions get in the way, frustration, and the commercial business brain probably goes on pause, especially in that small business space. Um, it comes down to certain wording and terminology you use. And you could have months and months of work, leading up to this and come undone in the way in which you deliver your message, so to speak. So, yeah, make sure that you're very clear on the process, on the wording to say, and that you've followed everything to cover and protect you as an employer.
Okay, so let's go down that road. What are the sorts of things that we need to or must have before that termination meeting occurs?
Yeah. I like to say to people, I want to make sure that you can sleep well at night knowing the decision that you're making. Because at the end of the day, you are terminating an employee's employment, which then, from their perspective, they've got no income, they've got bills to pay, food to put on the table, etc. You want to make sure that you know you've done everything possible to get this person back on track, or that what they did really does warrant termination. So we don't like our clients to be uncertain in their mind, to be really certain that you're comfortable with the decision. You might not like it. It's a bit like I get asked all the time, how can you fire someone? Well, I turn around and say, how can a doctor tell you that you've got terminal cancer and you've got 3 months left? Like, there's parts in your job that you don't like, but it's the way in which you deliver. Not everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows.
Mm.
So making sure that there's a valid reason to terminate, confirm that you've taken all reasonable steps to avoid this. Was there any alternative options? And whether procedural fairness has occurred. Has the employee been given every opportunity to improve, have their day in court, so to speak, give their outcome? And if all and is there no other alternatives? And if all those things are we've ticked all those boxes, well then termination makes sense. It's clear as day. But yeah, it comes back to, can you sleep at night knowing that you've ticked all your boxes and you've followed a fair and thorough process for that employee? And are you confident, if you end up in the commission, that you can back yourself?
Yep, 100%. So
Because
coming back to that, yeah.
yeah, if you know you haven't followed a process, if you know you don't have documentation, if you know you've just fired the gun without following through, well, then you're going to come unstuck. If you're prepared to cop the backlash that might be delivered, well, that's another thing. But
Yep.
yeah,
And is that where we tend to go wrong in your experience in dealing
yeah.
with, clients across the board?
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people go, oh, but that person's not going to take me. Well, okay, that person might not, but that person might be at the family barbecue on the weekend, and there could be a cousin who's a HR professional or an employment lawyer or
Spot on.
CEO of a business that knows something in this space. So it's not always them as individuals, it's who gets in their ear.
Yep. Yep.
And, we're not here to talk about, what happens in the commission. but it's a very employee pro um,
Okay.
environment, so to speak. It costs them very little to lodge a claim, and it's up to you to show why they don't deserve compensation.
Okay. Interesting. So how do
Mm.
we, as employers, as people managers, how do we reduce that legal risk?
Yeah, follow the correct process.
So
Don't
process
just
again.
assume it. I know I sound like a Groundhog Day. Make sure you follow the process, written documentation to support the outcomes and what you're doing. Raise items in a timely manner. Don't wait for them to escalate. Make sure that you raise them through written letter for the person, an invite to a disciplinary meeting. Use facts, figures, evidence, not emotions. Do not make assumptions without the employee being able to speak. Hear them out. Don't preempt the outcome,
Mm.
because saying the wrong thing and assuming the responses is going to get you in hot water.
Yep. Yep. And does it's the old scenario sometimes, but does delaying the action because sometimes we don't want to terminate, but does delaying that action make it harder to terminate?
Sometimes, but delaying in terms of slowing the process down and making sure we've ticked the boxes, that's a good thing. But
Okay.
ignoring, say, if this has been going on for 12 months and for the last 10 months you've ignored the matters and you've all of a sudden decided, no, I'm over this, I'm going to address it, then the employee would have every right to go, but hang on, I've been doing this for the last 10 months. Why hasn't anyone said anything about it?
Yep.
So that's where you have to be consistent in your process and your delivery across your business. You don't want someone to feel like they're going to be singled out.
Yeah. So just to, because I wrote that down in terms of slowing down and making sure you're ticking the process is really important
Yeah.
as opposed to ignoring. And then you're right. Someone 12 months later says, well, hang on a minute. I've been doing the same thing for 12 months and no one said anything to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's we see that a lot because employers just get jack of it and they're like, right, now I'm going to
Yeah.
address it. Well, that's fine. We 100% can, but don't expect that they're going to be out the door tomorrow of what you
Yeah.
want, because that's just not fair.